April 1945. The Reich is collapsing. In the forest south of Berlin, the German Ninth Army is encircled by the Soviet Red Army. Nearly 200,000 soldiers, civilians and children are trapped in what will soon be called the Halbe Pocket. They are outnumbered, outgunned and cut off from supplies. Food is gone, ammunition is running out. Soviet tanks and artillery close in from every side, sealing every road with fire. Hitler, raving from his bunker, demands that they stand and fight to the last man. But deep inside the forest, the men of the Ninth Army make another choice. They will attempt one final breakout, a desperate march through fire and steel that will become one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. By April 1945, the Soviet Union had launched its final crushing assault on Nazi Germany. From the east, more than 2 million Red Army soldiers surged forward in a massive offensive designed to capture Berlin before the Western Allies could arrive. The German defences were collapsing everywhere. The Wehrmacht had neither the strength nor the weapons to resist. Yet in the chaos of retreat, one force became isolated, the German Ninth Army, commanded by General Theodor Buss. Trapped southeast of Berlin in the dense Halbe forest, the Ninth Army numbered close to 200,000 men. It was a broken and desperate force, composed of battered divisions, fragments of panzer regiments, older reservists, Hitler Youth, and tens of thousands of civilians fleeing westward. Their situation was dire, surrounded by overwhelming Soviet forces armed with tanks, artillery and aircraft. They faced certain destruction. From his bunker in Berlin, Adolf Hitler demanded that they stand and die in place. He envisioned a glorious sacrifice that would slow the Soviet advance. But for Busse and his men, Hitler's orders were nothing but madness. They understood what surrender to the Soviets meant: captivity, death marches, or the Gulag. The only hope lay to the west, reaching the American lines on the Elbe River. And so, against all odds, they prepared for a breakout. On April 24th, the first desperate attempts began. Under cover of night, long columns of soldiers and civilians moved westward, slipping into the forests in search of escape. Wounded soldiers were carried on wagons, children clung to their parents, and armoured remnants of the once proud Wehrmacht rolled ahead to break the path. At dawn, the Soviets struck back. Every road and clearing was covered by Soviet guns. Katyusha rockets rained devastation on the packed columns. Mines tore apart advancing infantry. Tanks clashed in sudden eruptions of fire in the woods, where visibility was so poor that duels were fought at point-blank range. For the German Ninth Army, the breakout was not a battle. It was a nightmare. Civilians fell alongside soldiers. Villages were reduced to ashes. Entire units disappeared into Soviet ambushes. The forests echoed with screams, gunfire, and the thunder of artillery. Desperation pushed men to fight on. They charged Soviet lines with bayonets, machine guns, and the few remaining tanks they had left. General Busse urged his men forward, knowing that hesitation meant annihilation. Soldiers fought not for Hitler, nor even for Germany, but for survival. Each mile westward carried them closer to the Elbe and to the chance of reaching the Americans, but the cost of every step was staggering. The Halbe forest turned into a slaughterhouse. Soviet artillery tore apart the woods, splintering trees into deadly fragments. German soldiers, pressed tightly into columns, became easy targets. Civilians marching alongside the army were caught in the firestorms. Refugees carrying children and belongings fell beneath machine gun bursts. The cries of the wounded mixed with the constant roar of war. The Soviets were determined to prevent any escape. They built 3 layers of encirclement, each guarded by tanks, minefields and fortified positions. To break through, the Ninth Army would have to pierce each one in turn. The fighting was savage. Entire German battalions were wiped out trying to smash through the first ring. Panzer units launched desperate charges, burning under Soviet guns. Infantry fought hand-to-hand among shattered villages, stabbing with bayonets in the smoke-filled night. Every day the pocket grew smaller. Food was gone. Ammunition was nearly spent. Yet still, the Germans pressed forward. Many knew capture meant execution or endless years of slavery in Soviet camps. For the refugees caught among them, the choice was just as cruel. Try to reach the Americans or die in the firestorm. The ground was littered with burned-out tanks, broken wagons, and the bodies of the fallen. The forest floor was a graveyard, a place where soldiers and civilians alike paid the terrible price of war's final chapter. At last, after days of unimaginable fighting, fragments of the Ninth Army managed to tear open the Soviet lines. In scattered groups, soldiers broke free under the cover of darkness, slipping westward through burning villages and across shattered bridges. Starving, bloodied and exhausted, they carried only the hope of survival. Small groups reached the Elbe River, where they encountered American forces. To the survivors, it was salvation. They were disarmed and marched into captivity, but it was a captivity that meant life, not death. For the rest, the story ended in the forests of Halbe. Out of nearly 200,000 trapped, only about 25,000 soldiers and several thousand civilians reached safety. The rest were killed or captured. The Halbe Pocket became a grave for over 100,000. Burned-out tanks lay twisted in the mud. Forests were filled with shallow graves. Even today, bones are sometimes unearthed in the soil, silent witnesses to the chaos of those days. For those who escaped, survival carried a heavy burden. They had defied orders, abandoned the Reich's madness, and fought only for themselves and their families. They bore the scars of fire, starvation, and unimaginable loss. Their escape was not victory, it was endurance. The Battle of Halbe was one of the final convulsions of the Second World War in Europe. It was not a triumph, but a tragedy. The Ninth Army did not escape intact. It was shattered, destroyed in the attempt. Yet in their desperate breakout, a fragment of humanity was revealed. Men fought not for ideology, nor for a crumbling Reich, but for life itself. The story of Halbe is a reminder of the chaos of war's final days. It was a place where soldiers and civilians were thrown together in one last march through hell, where tanks, once symbols of power, became burning wrecks among the trees, where children, mothers and old men paid the same price as soldiers. For the Soviets, Halbe was a decisive victory that ensured Berlin would fall. For the Germans, it was the end of the line. For history, it is a haunting symbol of what happens when war drags on to the bitter end. Today, memorials and cemeteries mark the Halbe forest. Mass graves hold tens of thousands who never escaped. Yet the story of the few who broke through, the men and women who walked out of the inferno, remains a testament to endurance against impossible odds. The Halbe breakout was Hitler's last army, fighting not for victory, but for survival. In April 1945, the world was ending for Hitler's Germany. But in the chaos of the Halbe Pocket, one last desperate army fought to break free. Most did not survive. Those who did carried the memory of fire, steel and sacrifice for the rest of their lives. This was Hitler's last army, fighting not for victory, but for survival.